Hello, welcome to the Anime View. My name is Peggy Sue Wood, and I am the editor-in-chief of TAV. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Lauren Orsini, an esteemed author and anime journalist who has had a significant impact in the world of otaku culture. With her insightful writings and expertise, she has become a trusted voice for fellow otaku enthusiasts and aspiring anime bloggers alike. Lauren is the author of the blog Otaku Journalist, where she shares her experiences, observations, and deep knowledge of the anime industry, particularly on the business of writing in this industry. Drawing from her personal journey as a dedicated fan, she provides valuable insights into the inner workings of the otaku world, offering a unique perspective on making this passion your business. In addition to her blogs, which include Otaku Journalist, Gunpla 101, and Anime Origin Stories, Lauren has penned the highly regarded books Building Your Anime Blog and Otaku Journalism, where she expertly guides readers on how to create a successful anime blog from scratch and getting into the news side of anime industry, respectively. Both books offer a step-by-step guide for building up your name, building a loyal readership, increasing traffic, and even generating a sustainable income. With her comprehensive approach and practical advice, she equips aspiring anime writers with the tools they need to thrive in this competitive online landscape. As a prominent figure in the anime community, Lauren has contributed to renowned platforms such as Anime News Network, where she shares her insightful, thoughtful reviews and analysis of the latest anime releases through ANN announcements, the newsletter, CNN, PBS, Forbes, and numerous other publications. Her dedication to the craft, coupled with her deep understanding of the medium, has solidified her position as a respected reviewer and commenter. Today, Lauren has agreed to sit down with me for an interview where we'll get to know a little more about the person behind the blogs. Lauren, is there anything that you'd like to add?
It's just so sweet of you to say all those things about me. I really feel like your life is framed by how you spend your day-to-day, and I spend my day-to-day changing diapers, serving people food, which they then throw on the floor. I have two kids, two very young kids, and it's just almost embarrassing to hear such nice words about me. Thank you.
Your resume is truly impressive. I was really like, it was so interesting reading your blog post about like becoming a mom and then how you viewed anime, how it's changed. So I mean, I completely understand because I feel like my life as a student, but not in the same way because I feel like motherhood is just so much bigger. So like, I'm glad you like it. I really think that you're so amazing though, and I'm so glad that that we get the chance to share you with our readership. And hopefully share your work, which will be linked below at the bottom of this video and linked in the corresponding blog post as well.
Well, thanks again. I'm so glad to be here and talking about this and talking with another adult,
Yes, I'm awesome. I'm so glad. Okay, so we have about a little more than 10 questions that are kind of grouped together. We'll get to as many as we can, and then if things get off the rails because we're having fun talking, that works too. The first question I have for you is, can you tell us about the inspiration behind your blogs and the guiding thoughts or like mission statement that have influenced your creation and upkeep of them?
Yeah, so you're right that I have a couple of blogs, but I wanted for this question to focus on just the most active one, Otaku Journalist. Really, Otaku Journalist is going through a sea change as I go through a pivotal moment in my life and career where I went through the COVID-19 lockdown, had two kids, and now that my son is 1, I'm just now like getting back into being active and thinking about where do I want Otaku Journalist to go from here. But let's go back to the very beginning. I started it when I was 22. I was a graduate student. I was getting my master's degree in journalism at American University in DC. I had a teacher who made it a requirement for every student to secure a domain name and a WordPress blog. The idea was that we could share a portfolio of our work and prospective employers could see it. So my first domain name was my full name, and I started the blog under that. But I ended up writing less about just journalism in general because, eventually things get more specific over time. And I started writing about my interest in anime and fandom more and more. And eventually I came up with the idea of I came up with the name Otaku Journalist to signal my newly my newly specified topic of, fandom and reporting. Of course, I still did want to do what my teacher said and use my blog to find a job in journalism. I just really wanted to narrow down the field and get a job that would really fit me and my interests. I guess you could call that taking a risk, since we were taught in school like to report on a huge variety of topics in order to become well-rounded journalists, from political reporting to sports. But I already knew what kind of journalism I wanted to do. So it wasn't long after I started Otaku Journalist that I started my internship at Kotaku, where I was writing about culture and gaming. And then a year or so later, I was working at the Daily Dot covering internet culture. So I was 22 then, and now I'm 36. The world has changed a lot in the last 14 years. Like, even calling my job at the Daily Dot covering internet culture, we don't call it that anymore. We call it culture reporting, not internet culture reporting, because the internet has so greatly affected real life. There's really no divide anymore. And of course, due to gaming's still ongoing right-wing backlash in the past decade, if I had interned at Kotaku just a few years later than I did, that the commenters would have eaten me alive.
Right.
It was a much more hostile place to get a start. So your question comes to me at a time when I'm struggling to determine the relevance of my advice on Otaku Journalist for the next generation of fandom reporters. Online reporting as a career is currently, I'd say, contracting, while greedy media executives attempt to make chatbots and AI do our jobs.
Yeah,
there are
strike right now. Yeah. Sorry, not to interrupt. Please continue.
No, I mean, we definitely have to talk about AI if we're going to talk about writing online. I recently wrote a article for Forbes. Well, I contributed to a list of the AI top 50, like 50 influential people and companies in artificial intelligence. And I was like, thank you so much for letting me work on this as a writer instead of just having AI generate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Forbes is actually really against having AI generated articles. It's if you have a blog on Forbes, it's a rule that you can't put an AI generated article out, which is nice. But not everyone is like this.
Agreed. Actually, we're playing around with AI to help some of our less experienced writers to like get a handle of it. And it's talking about in education too. And there's a big divide. Most of the professors are like, no student should use AI ever. And then there's some professors that are like, well, this is going to be their new life. AI isn't going away.
No.
We should train them how to use it properly and give them some sort of guiding moral or ethic with it. So it's a crazy topic right now. I think for us, it's really important that if you do use AI, we tell the few writers that we have, it's like, if you're going to use AI, like you have to credit that you used AI, and you have to have your first draft has to be written by you. So it's more of like a reworking of wording and things like that. But even then, it's like I don't know, it's a big question right now.
Yeah, after what I've done writing about AI and playing around with AI, this is a very very basic, simple, kind of flippant hypothesis of mine, which is that AI is good if you're trying to do silly things with a computer or exciting things with a computer, and you're like, I use the computer to do this. But AI is bad, actually, if you're trying to replace a writer or an artist.
It's soulless. If you just try to like something in, it doesn't have really a voice, which I think
it's the people who are messing with AI that are giving it the soul. Yeah, because I do think there is potential for AI, but not the way that greedy executives think there is.
I completely agree. I don't know how you feel about TikTok, but I'm a big fan of it right now. And I think it's really interesting because somebody was saying on TikTok, everybody should be removing their stuff from Google Docs for the potential that it's going to be, implemented into an AI bought at some point. Because technically, I think they have in their, bylines that right now it's still your work, but they could change their service agreement. And how many people read those service agreements? So thank you for bringing that up, because it really is. And I think what you were mentioning earlier actually feeds into my next question, which is many writers struggle with sharing their voices and opinions. What advice would you give to writers who are feeling conflicted about sharing their work and thoughts, especially considering the potential for disagreement and criticism right now?
Well, I love this question because so often we're told to just grow a thicker skin. But really, it's that capacity to feel emotional, to be hurt, or to be frustrated that helps us to interact with the art that we're trying to review. If you become so cynical that you are not affected by people hurling insults at you, then you lose that capacity to review.
Right.
Yeah, and you're not supposed to admit when somebody's comments hurt you. Don't feed the trolls and then they'll go away. But just the other day, I was thinking about a meme comment somebody left on my very first story that I published on fanfiction.net when I was 12. It just kind of popped into my head out of nowhere.
Oh, I feel that. I about some of the comments we get on here. We mostly post even the comments where they're like, "This sucks, you're terrible." On our blog, we share it, and I always respond to it in kind of like a sometimes petty. But the two other writers are like, just don't respond, post it, but don't respond. You're better than that. I'm like, I am, but I'm ready to get down and fight. It's good work. But they're right, maybe. So then what would you think is the most important advice to those that are hesitant to try to push past it? I mean, not necessarily grow a thicker skin, because you're probably going to remember, it's going to stick with you.
Yeah, you can definitely tell yourself that it is much easier to critique than it is to create. So there is always going to be criticism. But this made me think of where I get the most pushback, which is in my weekly streaming reviews on Anime News Network, because in reporting, there's what's true and there's what's false. So if somebody's like, "Hey, this is false," that's something serious. You need to take that seriously, because we're trying to report the truth. But with an anime review, that's my personal opinion, and there is no true or false. So people disagree a lot. What's great is ANN lets me say whatever I want, because it's listed that it's my opinion. It's not the review of ANN.
Right.
So I'm not thinking about censoring myself that way. But I also don't want to censor myself based on if I think something's going to get me criticism from fans. If I think I publish something that a bunch of fans will have an issue with, I'll just avoid reading the comments. I mean, I don't have to look at it, or I can come back when I'm in a better mental state and look at it if I want. Because I don't want to be contorting my review to fit with fans' opinions. It wouldn't be a very interesting review, and it wouldn't be true to myself. And I mean, it's not like it's in my contract. I don't even have a contract that I would have to reply to anything somebody says.
Right.
Yeah, but if I'm feeling emotionally vulnerable about it, I just won't read the comments, because it's more important to me to say what I'm really feeling than think, I want to say this, but I think people are going to get really mad. Should I just tone it down? And that won't be as interesting to read either.
Right. I think it's a very interesting line when you're doing a review, because I think those thoughts kind of intrude anyway, oh, somebody's not going to like this. But I think it's good advice that you're giving, where it's you don't have to read the comments. You can just post it.
Yeah, you can disengage. When I was working at the Daily Dot, it was in my contract. You must reply to the comments. Can you imagine a news site saying that today?
No.
They're just a cesspool now, the comments.
Yeah. And on that note, moving into our third question, for reviewers who may feel conflicted about compromising their independence or creative control, in exchange for support, whether that be with like a traditional publication or with getting what is the word, advertisers and things like that. What advice do you have to help them navigate this particular challenge?
So I'm sure you've heard of the phrase, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism.
I have.
Yeah. I mean, there's no ethical employment under capitalism too. It all goes back to something. Like, one of the best paying employers in anime writing is Crunchyroll. Especially if you can get a job like writing scripts for their videos or on the Crunchyroll news site. But Crunchyroll isn't perfect. If you work for them, you have to live with knowing that the people at the top are not adequately paying translators or paying English voice actors or treating them well. And well, for what it's worth, I mean, the people on the ground floor that you would be working with at Crunchyroll are passionate anime fans, and I can assume that nobody will speak to me on the record about it, but I can assume that they do not like what
right,
the C-suite is doing with Crunchyroll.
That's true of many right now, that they're hiring so many new voice actors too. On one hand, they're like, oh, that's great, you're giving people an opportunity, but they pay them so low that it's like almost unlivable. There's so many of them that are like, they're like, hey, I'm the voice of this and this and this, and they're on like a TikTok, and then they'll be like, maybe support my Patreon, because
there was a union of voice actors and Crunchyroll just wouldn't work with any of them. They won't do talks with the union.
Right.
But you can make really good money writing for Crunchyroll. So, that's something you have to think about. So even with Anime News Network, where I write, where I consider it to be an extremely by fans for fans publication, as you know, Katakawa recently acquired a majority stake in it. So if I review a Katakawa show, there's going to be a note at the bottom. It says warning, like not warning, but like editor's note, Katakawa owns a majority stake.
Yeah.
So far, this hasn't changed anything. Katakawa hasn't gone to editorial to say something like, oh, you reviewed one of our shows badly. Could you tone that down? They and I think it's in the agreement with Chris, the CEO, that they can't do that, but they call the shots. They're the majority stakeholder. So there's always the specter that might happen. Yeah, and then it's just for everything. If you create a Substack newsletter, you have to wrestle with the fact that, oh, well, Substack is giving me good money, but they're also giving a platform to anti-vaccine advocates and other grossness.
Yeah.
For me personally, my blogs are profitable because I'm an Amazon affiliate. If you click certain links, especially on Gunpla 101, and make a purchase, then I get a cut. And I'm absolutely not going to defend Amazon. On the one hand, they're not a great, they're like borderline monopoly. And on the other hand, they make it so I can publish whatever I want on my WordPress blog and make money.
Right.
So in the end, this is a very individual struggle. The answer is going to be different for everyone. If you want to make money, you're going to eventually have to wrestle with this question.
But it's more of like an individual choice. You got to, I guess, decide what works best for you, what you can do.
Yeah. If I want to be completely independent, I could publish reviews on my blog. And who does a really good job is Guardian Enzo of Lost in Anime.
Okay.
He publishes reviews on his blog. He says whatever he wants, and then he has no, actually, he still has to deal with something because he's funded entirely by his readers, but he uses Patreon, and Patreon itself has some issues. So I mean, even that setup where he's completely funded by, completely independent, answers to nobody, still has to deal with Patreon, which has a kind of checkered past.
Yeah. That's true. I think it's good to say, for so many people, it's something that we struggle with, because there have been a couple of times where we've been offered, to work with advertisers, and I'm like, great, and they're like, yeah, and we'd like to like write blog posts for you, and we're like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah, you have to decide what you can stomach, I guess.
Right. Okay. On to our next question. For those of you who are listening and don't quite know, Chris is Christopher McDonald from ANN.
Yes, he's the CEO.
He's wonderful. I've met him in person a couple of times at Anime Expo. Great guy. And he's been so nice to answer my questions sometimes in email, where I'm like, hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, and he's been so active in the forums, especially when fans had questions about the Kadokawa majority acquisition. I mean, yeah, and he's clearly very passionate about anime too. But once again, I'm not saying that Kadokawa is going to do anything, but the point is they have the power.
Right. And that's true. That's struggling. Many newspapers are struggling with that. There are plenty of newspapers that have been bought out by rich billionaires and
like Washington Post.
Yeah, that have decided.
Speaking of Amazon, Bezos owns that.
All about so and so. There was a video released at some point too, where like the CEO of some newspaper said, like, I don't report on real news, write about puppies. Puppies sell, and as long as puppies sell, it was something like that. If I can find it, I will link it at the bottom of this video. And that's kind of like a worry constantly in journalism. So
the section of the Post I wrote for in 2021 is gone. It is no longer funded, their gaming and culture section.
There's been a lot of gaming and culture sites that I used to visit that have been shutting down. And it's interesting that, like new sites pop up, but not all of them necessarily survive unless they have the backing, sort of like ANN right now. And maybe that was part of it. I don't know.
Once again, we're experiencing a contraction of the industry right now.
Exactly. This goes into since we were talking about ANN, could you provide some insight onto the process of becoming a reviewer for a site like ANN? What level of commitment is required to maintain sort of a consistent income as a reviewer, beyond just your own personal sites? I wanted to add here very quickly that one thing that I understand about ANN is like you have to understand Japanese. That's a big part of it. I don't know if that's still true.
To be a news writer for them, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Not necessarily a reviewer. Good to know.
Yeah, not to be a reviewer. I am on a 320-day streak on Duolingo, and I did take 5 years of Japanese classes, but I failed the N4. I'm not very good.
I couldn't pass it for sure. And I've been studying it for a while. I know a couple of people that have, and I'm like, you're very impressive. I can't. My dad is fully fluent,
that's impressive.
Yes. And he has an Osaka accent.
Like your dad? That's so cool.
It's really funny because when he is on the phone with he used to work in business with Japan, and people would fly to meet him. They're really like, oh, shocked that he's a tall white man.
Jozu desu ne. Probably.
Yes. Okay, so sorry. Please answer the question if you don't mind. What level commitment?
And also I don't make a consistent income as a reviewer. I could not live on what I make as a reviewer for ANN. Let's get that out of the way first. Even if I reviewed 4 shows every week, which is the most any reviewer takes on for ANN, I would not be making a living. I will say that Kadokawa gave everyone a slight raise after the acquisition.
Okay.
And I don't really know what I could say about how much I make. So I'll just err on the side of not saying much. Okay. If I did want to make a living, I would need to apply for one of Anime News Network's full-time roles, and they are hiring.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. I'll try to link that below too if it's published in time. I think that many many people that work in content creation, it's important to recognize that the income is very low. You often get paid per article. There are content farms like Valnet Inc. does a lot of content farms with Screen Rant and CBR.com and a handful of others.
Yeah, or you make money based on hits, traffic bonuses.
For those of you that are interested in becoming sort of a content creator person, it's important to recognize that like this may be more of a side hustle sometimes. I don't know for everybody. Even for very well-established journalists like Lauren Orsini right here that I'm speaking with, I know lots of established journalists that have talked about how they actually, they write a lot of articles, but they don't necessarily, unless they have a full-time position, they don't necessarily make.
Yeah, because you spend so much time doing unpaid work. The unpaid work being pitching most of the time, like coming up with ideas of things you could write about and then sending them to editors. Be like, would you like an article about this? Would you like a feature about this? Mm-hmm. And they might not. And then it's like, okay, well, why did I research that? Or you could just send that emails to so many other places, just keep trying. And then of course you write it, they like it, they write it, you write it, it gets published, and then you have to invoice, and invoicing is also unpaid.
Yes.
So you spend a lot of time doing things that are not for pay. But if you have a salaried position, like the ones ANN is hiring for, then you don't have to spend, the 8 hours you spend at work are all, you get paid for all that.
Right.
That time instead of a lot of unpaid time.
I've done a couple of interviews when I was doing freelance to see if I wanted to do freelance. And a lot of people said that invoicing was a very difficult part of the job sometimes because you have to track people down to be like, hey, please pay me for the work.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had that as an experience? I know this is a separate question, but I just wanted to ask if that was another thing to maybe warn our viewers about, maybe.
Like before the Katakawa acquisition, when money was tighter for ANN because they were just mostly fan run and self-funded and ad funded, we were on a 3-month delay. So I would get my payment for September and December and so on.
Okay.
And I use QuickBooks to really quickly generate invoices, and that has helped me a lot. It also can send auto reminders. It can also let people pay me via credit card if they want. Okay. So that's helped a lot.
Okay.
But also just getting recurring work from the same employer and just getting direct deposit is fantastic. And then I spend a lot less labor invoicing, like with Forbes.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Let's go on to the next question. In your ebook, Build Your Anime Blog, published in 2015, you offer valuable insights for aspiring anime bloggers. Could you provide, a preview maybe of some strategies or insights that were covered in the book that you still think are very helpful for bloggers to achieve success?
Yeah. When I saw you were going to ask me this question, I had to look at my own book because it has been 8 years. So much has changed.
Yes.
I've changed, but I did find 3 things that I think are still very important, even for blogging in 2023.
Okay.
And the first one is make content you can't get anywhere else.
Okay.
Like maybe a personal essay about how an anime has affected your life. Nobody could write that but you. And then you could answer a tough anime question that you've always wondered about. Like, I once read a blog post about where do wall scrolls come from? Why do we have anime wall scrolls instead of anime posters? Mm-hmm. Who came up with that? Okay. And I was the first person to have that information available. And you can still look that up on my blog. Another point is interact with your readers. I don't think it should be a one-way conversation. Talk to them, connect with them on social media, thank them whenever they share one of your posts. They'll start to feel good about supporting you because they know it's appreciated. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like you're just reciting information from on high. On the internet was made to connect people. Mm-hmm. Another piece of advice I have is to connect with other creators. Make a list of anime blogs that are bigger or more established than yours, that you read, in fact. Offer them a few topics that you could guest post on, with a caveat that you'd like them to link back to your site somewhere in that guest post. A lot of big anime blogs get offers to guest post all the time, but you can refer to the first thing I said, make content you can't get anywhere else. I think this is how I've gotten a lot of readers for Otaku Journalist, is that I just have a link in the bottom of my reviews for Anime News Network.
Okay. All right. Is there anything, if you were to ever update your book, is there anything vital that you think you'd add based on like your continued work with Otaku Journalist?
I mean, well, definitely AI based on our conversation, but I'll be the first to admit that my books are pretty dated at this point, and I would like to rework them for the next decade, or maybe a sequel or something, with everything I've learned as a reporter and as a person since then. It's a little out of date that I emphasize Twitter so much in my books, because it's how I've met other fans. It's how I found just about every opportunity. I got offered my job for the Daily Dot on Twitter. I applied for my Anime News Network review position on Twitter, and that's how I found out about it too. But Twitter is not doing great right now. If I were to add a new chapter, I think I'd want to add one on harassment campaigns.
Oh, okay. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Like, okay, so anyone can be the main character of the day for any reason. I mean, sometimes the main character, in my opinion, deserves it. And sometimes it's a woman saying, oh, I love having coffee with my husband, and everyone just hates her. Like, some of us can't drink coffee. Some of us don't have husbands.
Yeah.
I mean, people have written entire books about this topic, and I would like to take a stab at it myself.
I think that would be really interesting, especially, we were talking earlier about like the criticism that you get online sometimes, that some of it is just, I think, very unjustified.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be interesting to see.
I think you do need to know the difference between justified criticism and unjustified criticism too, because sometimes people just really double down when they should not, when an apology would be better or a correction would be better.
Or just a not responding anymore.
Mm-hmm. Or just don't post through it.
On a similar note, in your ebook Otaku Journalism, which was also published a handful of years ago, you provide
almost a decade ago.
Yes. You also provide readers with a guide to getting into anime journalism, from researching publications, pitching, finding the right fit, to making some money as a freelancer. Could you share what you think is the most important mindset or philosophy to have as you're getting into this business, maybe as a freelancer? Or could you share what you think is the most important, mindset or philosophy when you're deciding if this is the right, I want to say, career path for you? Especially because there are lots of, aspiring journalists, and some of them are definitely anime manga fans and probably want to write on these in the future.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of people out there who want this, because my top blog post still, even now, is something I wrote years ago, like how to get paid to watch anime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you can't just watch anime and get paid. You have to then write about it or create something. So what I think is the number one thing is you need to be resilient. You need to be okay with rejection and trying again and again. An example is when I wrote for CNN, because CNN did have a geek culture beat for a little bit. I wrote to the editor every week for a couple of months with ideas, with pitches about stuff I could write for her. I'd be like, what do you think about this? I think I'd have like 3 to 5 ideas in every email. And usually she would not respond at all. Actually, she never replied. I didn't even know if she was getting these emails.
Okay.
And then finally, she responded, okay, I like this idea. When can you have it? To something I did like 2 months after, like 2 or 3 months into this process. And I said, I can have it in a week. And I turned this article around in a week. But if I had stopped after getting 0 replies for my first idea, or my second, or my third, or my fourth, or my fifth, I would have never written this article.
I think that's one, very impressive. I don't know if I could take it getting rejected for two, or not rejected, but just like no response. I would probably like send follow-up after follow-up after follow-up. Which
Well,
is
I had a friend who had written for them who was like, oh, the editor's really, really busy. And just having that little bit of insider knowledge sustained me.
that's good to know. It's good to have friends in the industry who can be like, oh yeah, this is a thing that's normal.
Yeah, I think that's what I want to do with my blog now, is like be the blog that I could have read when I was 22. Because sometimes it does feel like there's this big clique of anime bloggers, anime writers who all know each other. And yeah, it is true that like everyone who writes about anime knows each other. But I don't think it's unwelcoming. It just feels intimidating when you're like really young and getting started and nobody knows who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to be someone who can amplify those voices.
I think that's awesome. I think that I have a question about your anime origin stories in a bit, and I think that would tie into this. That I find your project. I mean, I'll move the question order around if you don't mind. The anime origin stories project is really intriguing, and it sounds to me like you're maybe considering doing something a little bit in combination with that for Otaku Journalist. Would you share more? What kind of plans do you have for Otaku Journalist in the future?
Yeah, so for anyone listening who doesn't know about anime origin stories, which is, I mean, it's been a long time, it's been years, but I was interviewing people all over the world about their first anime, how, if they still watch anime, if they ever went through a gap where they weren't watching anime, and what anime means to them. Because I was just personally curious about this. I guess part of being a journalist is you have to be a little nosy.
Mm-hmm.
And you are not the first person to be like, what's going on with this project? Are you going to keep doing it?
Do you plan to turn it into a book maybe?
I do have a backlog of like 200 that I could add to the site. And I just stopped doing. I think I stopped when I was pregnant with my first kid.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, right now I have no plans for it at all. I have all this information. It's really cool, especially to see trends in it. Like people from South America all like tend to say that their first anime was Saint Seiya.
Oh,
because that was just, people from France all seem to have the same first anime. People of a certain age who are from a certain country, because of the way that broadcast channels were. And I think this is really valuable information, and which is why I keep every year renewing the .com and doing upkeep on the blog, even as I'm not updating it. But right now, I hate to disappoint, but I do not really know what's next.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I will say, just from an education perspective, it sounds like such a fascinating and large survey of the fandom that you could probably, I don't know if you write academic papers, but it would make probably a really fascinating academic paper to look at like the different crossing combination.
Yeah, maybe I could collaborate with an academic, or
yeah, that would be awesome. I think I'm actually I just spoke at AX the July weekend, which was awesome. And I was speaking though on a foundation for a project that I'm working on, where I want to look at how publishing differences between countries affects the distribution of comics and manga and things like that. And one of the things that I've noticed so far is like manga, with the start of the pandemic, manga overtook American comics. And part of it, I think, is definitely story. There's a more variation than just the superhero stories. And I know we have more than just superhero stories in the US, but
yeah, but also it's just, where do I start? Oh, you start at manga volume 1.
Yeah, and also it's cheaper. a manga book is a manga magazine is only like $10-$20. A volume is probably, 6 or 7 with tax and everything, at least in our area. Sometimes it's a little bit more expensive. Every now and then you get like a $10 volume and you're like, oh, that feels a little weird. But for that same price, you can only buy 1 or 2 issues of an American US comic that are little tiny, thin strips when you can have like a whole book. And I think what's really interesting is that Korean webcomics are
manhwa
shadowing the market now, and they're even cheaper. So
yeah, I'm actually a huge fan of Korean webcomics. I got into it during the pandemic. No, actually a little sooner. I got into it when I was nursing my daughter, because you can just look at them on your phone. They're meant to just be endless scroll, one hand. You hold a baby in the other hand. Just very accessible.
Very accessible, a lot cheaper, so much and the apps,
many of them are free.
Yeah. Most of them, I would think. Like that. I would love to hear some recommendations after we finish this interview. I think that would just be like a fun thing to exchange, because I love
because I am a voracious webtoon reader. I am current on like 20 or 30 different series.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yes. Then let's speed round the last couple of questions. Going back to your book on otaku journalism and the similar question that I had about your build an anime blog, what might be something new but vital that you think you might add if you were going to update the book? I think one of the things you said was dropping Twitter, and not as much Twitter emphasis.
I want to put less emphasis on like an exclusively fandom career.
Okay.
Like my right now, my main money is coming, like my main job is working for Forbes as a tech reporter. Okay. That's how I make more serious money than what I make in fandom writing. I mean, my dream was once to become a full-time anime writer, anime blogger, but that's really hard to do. I thought I could do this through offering digital products. I tried so many different ways, affiliate marketing, writing books, writing articles and getting paid for those. But I realized that it's a lot easier if I just go instead of trying to make money come to that, go where the money is. Right now, we need tech reporting. Like I write a lot about enterprise tech, which can get a little dry. It's business to business tech products, not products that people like you and me would buy, but products that businesses sell to other businesses. Okay. And people say things like, a full stack platform of synergized collaboration, and I have to turn that into English. So I think I would tell people, like, you're not a failure if you're doing other stuff too.
Right. Might need to do other stuff. Okay.
Yeah, there are very few people who work in just anime. So yeah, and most of them have like full-time jobs for different anime sites.
Well, thank you for your insight. On our final question then, is there anything else that you'd like to add or recommend to those listening?
Yeah, I was writing down answers to all of these so I would have prompts for what to say, because my brain is mush since having my kids, and I did not write anything for this one yet. I'm sure if I sat down and wrote about it, I would be able to think of something. Definitely, there are a lot of great anime blogs out there that you can read. Like I think I mentioned previously my friends who write Anime Herald and Yadatachi. There are a lot of cool indie blogs out there. People doing cool stuff with writing. Like what Anime Herald's been doing is they have Patreon supporting some interesting investigative journalism about anime. And at Yadatachi, they've been doing a year-long list of every single manga and light novel release. So you can just go on there and see every single one and pre-order it or buy it the day it's available.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we get so caught up in like what to contribute to the anime space that sometimes I'm saying we, but really I mean I forget that there's a lot of cool stuff that they're out there to read too. You don't have to do it alone.
Okay. All right. Well, then I want to conclude our interview right now by saying that you can find Lauren's books currently available on Amazon. I highly recommend both. I know that they're definitely a little bit older, but they still have a lot of great information. I also recommend checking out Otaku Journalist, which is Lauren Orsini's blog. It's phenomenal. A lot of the posts are still very relevant, and I love just the personal anecdotes that you give about your connection with anime. I think it's great, inspiring, and wonderful to read. So I highly recommend anybody listening to check that out. It will be linked below in either the blog post or the video. I also would like to advertise our blog. I hope you'll check us out if you're listening to this on YouTube, and thank you so much.
Oh, one more thing, Peggy. Just tell me what day we're putting this up and I'll make the book free for a week. That's what Amazon lets me do. They let me do a promotion where the book is free. They do not let me make it permanently free.
Okay, I will let you know when I know. I don't know yet, but awesome.